Welcome to the Music Reel. I'm your host, Nicola Burton, and today I have the Aria Award winner, Tyrone Noonan, with me today. Tyrone, how are you going?
Good. How are you,
I
Nicki?
am good, considering we are in July, and the last time I spoke to you was late March, and never in a million years did I think we would still be here.
There you go.
Yep, here
I'm.
we are.
I'll have to tell you, I'm not surprised.
Well, okay. Tell me more about that. Why are you not surprised?
I don't know. I think. Look, I remember about 10 years ago watching, one of those current affairs kind of discussion talkback things, and they had a bunch of really high level virologists and associated kind of specialists on a panel. And what they were predicting that's just happened, they were saying 10 years ago could happen any minute,
Yeah.
basically.
Okay.
And we've had little potential mini outbreaks of SARS and all this, the
Bird flu, this one.
bird flu, Lissa virus, all these different things.
Yeah.
Our local one, Hendra
That's
virus.
right. That's right. The Hendra virus. Can't forget that.
Yeah. So, and at one point there, it was looking like, being in a subtropical region was going to end up being a dicey thing, at one point there, didn't it?
It
It was
did.
looking a
It
little
did.
scary. It was like looking
It
like,
did.
what are we going to have to do? Kill all the bats?
Right. So here we are. But before we get into that part, I want to talk about The Black Dog. Now, that's a single that you've released last month.
Yep.
Now, I guess, look, I watched the film clip and I loved it because it's actually, I thought it's going to be, really down. It's uplifting. It's actually an uplifting song.
That's the
And
idea.
I loved it. And what I liked is the one we say, you don't own me. That's
Yeah.
such a great statement to say, you don't own me. And the way you had old you and new in the shed, it was great to actually see. I mean, that's a great strategy for people to use with mental health strategies. So talk to me about the story behind why you decided to do this song about Black Dog.
Yeah, cool. So my main co-writer is an amazing woman called Donna Dyson. And, her personal journey is like quite spectacular, really. I'm not sure how much of it she'd want me to reveal, I guess, but she's had, she was someone who was at the top of her game in like Education Queensland, had been, principal, had written like, I think over 100 books that had all been published, scholastic kind of books and various other books. And then she suddenly, had a major life health event happen, which forced her to kind of reassess her life, and she decided that from that point on she was going to do what she always wanted to do, which was music. And she's incredibly proactive. She has her own project, Spotty Kites. And but she'd also been working on a project which had never come to fruition, but it was a project about dealing with soldiers who come back from war with PTSD.
Yeah. Okay.
So these words, or a version of these words, were already in existence from that project, and we were I was talking to Donna about, just going to be honest about, how we have way too many suicides in our industry.
Yeah.
And the thing that shocked me the most was that often it was middle-aged men who were leaving behind partners and kids, either, hanging themselves or jumping off buildings, for God's sake. So dramatic. And obviously, we've decided as a society that we don't report about it or talk about it for fear of copycatting. But I think that's just a cop-out, to be honest. That's just because we're not prepared to open that Pandora's box, because as soon as you do, then you have to unpack the whole thing. You know what I mean?
And no one wants to go there because it's too confronting. I mean, in the lockdown, so between March and now in July, I know personally 12 people that have killed themselves. And that's just me. And
No
some of
way.
them, one of them was really close to home. And it's
Wow.
because, if we don't address these issues, when we have a situation like lockdown, when all of your normal coping strategies are taken away from you, people just can't cope. So I want to hear more from you about, I mean, have you actually experienced it?
Look, I don't think I've ever been clinically diagnosed, but there's been a couple of times in my life where I've gone through a real downer, and I hate to sound like, I don't know what the word to use, but like I've had two moments where I really kind of went through that, and they were both when I'd come back to Australia after living for years overseas.
Understandable.
And apparently it's quite a common thing,
Yeah.
you know, and I think particularly if you're a creative person, because you realise coming back, you know, it brings home why you left in the first place, you know, because
Exactly.
Australia is a wonderful country, but it's a pretty unforgiving place to be an artist.
Especially now.
Yeah, especially now, I guess. Yeah.
Especially now. Yeah. And you've come from New York, which, you know, everything's about, you know, the artist over there. So to come from there and come back to Brisbane, oh boy.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
challenging. But
All right.
having said that though, you know, like I realized after 3 years in New York that it's incredibly difficult to build an audience there because, you know, any night
Yes.
of the week you decide you're going to do a gig, there's some legend, you know, there's several legends playing somewhere to
I know.
competing
I
against.
know.
And what I found out towards the end, which is really interesting, that a lot of native New Yorkers actually moved to satellite towns. They moved to Philly or they moved somewhere else, Connecticut, and they build a local fan base there, and that's
Yeah.
how you do it. I
I think,
started to come to that realization after 3 years in New York, you
did
know.
you ever get to Nyack, which is up in the north part of the New York state? So that's a little village that have done just that. It is the most
Right.
incredible artistic centre because, like you said, I mean, Woody Allen's playing every Monday night at the Carlisle. How can you compete with that?
Yeah. Or the Vanguard Big Band,
That's
you
it.
know, every Monday night. Yeah.
All right, so you've got this great song, Black Dog. What do you think? I mean, I'm just looking at this website now. It's called the 73%. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a US report saying that 73% of independent artists are suffering with depression, anxiety, and suicide. Think about
Whoa.
that. 73%. So the 73%.com. I mean, that's a massive number.
73%.com.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
73%.com.
And is
Check
it
it out.
numbers or all?
So yeah, so THE then 73% in
Yep.
letters.com.
Wow.
So it's a record union that have done these surveys. I mean, that's 73% is an enormous number. So I don't know what it is in
Wow.
Australia. Yeah. So I think this
Well,
is a conversation we have to
yeah.
have, Ty. So let's talk about it. What do you think we need to do in this industry to combat the mental health crisis that we're in right now? Particularly now, there's barely any gigs. Let's have that chat.
Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, gee, where do you start? I don't really know. I mean, look, the thing is that, you know, it's great that there is the Support Act helpline, you know, which is kind of specifically tailored to people from the entertainment industry. That's a 24/7 hotline, and I'd say not enough people are using that,
Yeah.
you know, because there's still, I think, you know, like that's one thing about Americans, you know, it's like going to a therapist in America is just as normal as going to a GP. Whereas I still think there's a bit of a stigma about going to a therapist here. And also it's quite expensive, you know, going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist here. That's the other thing too. It's quite expensive and you only get so much back, you know, or whatever. So I think there's that, you know, it's a different culture. It's like, you know, it's the same thing I was talking about in that song Bastard Son, particularly when it comes to male culture, in that, you know, there's this bullshit idea of this kind of male bravado man, you know, which comes from that Menzian concept. And there's still a hangover of that the man's supposed to be tough as nails and, you know, doesn't really talk about his feelings or emotions with his mates at the pub because that's a sign of weakness, you know, which that whole concept, I think, needs to die in this country, you know. And I think, you know, men need to accept that we've screwed it up and we need to let women have a go at running things. I think if we did those two things, which we could do overnight if we wanted to, you know.
I don't want to say that men screwed it up because I think it's...
They did though. That's the truth. The world is screwed up now because of men, because of the imbalance of power that was caused when they murdered 9 million women across Europe between, you know, mid 1650 up until about 1800. Yeah, that's it. That's
So you
why
feel,
we are in the world. I fully believe that.
okay, well, look, it's good to hear that perspective because I always like to keep a balance where everyone's involved. So what do you think, right? If you think men are responsible, what can women do to help change that? Because we're all in this together. We're all stuck in this life together. No one's getting out alive.
Well, the first thing is that the world needs to come to this realization that I've come to,
Yeah.
you know? And then when that happens, then surely anyone with half a brain will realize, well, clearly we need to, you know, start voting in more women. Like, you know, I think a lot of women have attempted to get into Australian politics, but I remember there was an article there a little while ago where there was like a whole bunch of women that got in and just found the culture so toxic and have realised, you know, my own personal health and safety is more important than this shit show, and they've gotten out again. And I think so. So the whole culture, the whole bully boy culture in Canberra needs to change.
Yeah.
You know, the whole culture of question time needs to change. You know, any of us who look at question time just immediately lose respect for all people in the room because it's just a bloody, you know, it's basically just dudes sitting around, you know, waving their dicks at each other. Honestly,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Oh,
it.
exactly. I agree.
We just need to start calling things for what they are in the world and stop putting up with bullshit. We all need to stand up and say, this is bullshit, basically, and
So,
stop putting up with it. You know, when someone like ScoMo, I don't give a shit about left or right politics, but when someone like ScoMo turns up with a block of coal, you know, the colour of that person's heart.
yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay, so we look at. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, but I'm up for the challenge. Let's do it.
Well, you know,
Because
and from a cultural perspective, you know, Australia is like is so retarded. You know, we are generations behind every other Western country in the world insofar as recognising and appreciating culture and art. And I'd say,
yeah,
you
I
know,
agree with that.
probably the primary problem with that is that we haven't properly dealt with our history and that we haven't found a way to properly respect and integrate the original culture of this country.
So when we
And
talk about mental health with all of those issues, it's it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Where do you begin to actually start attacking that problem? And I think that mental health starts with your actual physical health. And you were talking about going to the GP. I think that might be something that we need to look at instead of going to the GP. Maybe look at a naturopath, look at an integrative therapist, someone who's actually going to deal with you, what you're eating, how you're feeling, are you moving, what's your breath like, are you meditating, how's your relationship with yourself, dealing with your inner child wounds, all of those things, because they all combine with your health, your physical health, and then that triggers your mental health. Because before you deal with that, how do you then deal with politics? How do you deal with the structures in our society? How do you actually get people to appreciate art if they're so foggy with the shit that they're putting in their bodies that they just want to stay distracted?
sure,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Like,
But
you
I
got to
also, I
start
also
there.
think too. I also think too. There's, I'm not sure, and I might be completely naive in saying this, but I would imagine that there's an unsettled energy generally on this land because of the trauma of the original people who are so connected to this land.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd say that's what it is. There's not a settled energy here. It's
Okay.
been unsettled since Cook, I would say.
So how do
And,
we
and,
work with
and
that?
Port Arthur was just a small indication of that.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. 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 So okay. So let's start with energy because we are energetic beings, right? What can we do? What do you think? If that is the foundation, what do you think is the first step to dealing with that? Because this is all connected.
Yeah, I'd say meditation. First step.
What needs
Like
time?
I think maybe the organisation who runs TM, although they'd get overwhelmed, like it's a small organisation and they're wonderful people. Maybe the Australian government should give them $1 billion to get everyone in Australia on TM. There you go. How's that?
I agree. Imagine going to your GP and he teaches you how to meditate.
Yeah,
He teaches you this is what you need to do with your relationship. Do these breathing exercises. I reckon that would change a lot of things. And also,
and
people are talking about 5G and all this COVID stuff. I get the feeling that energy medicine is going to be the next big thing.
hopefully, let's see. That'd be good. like, and pranic healing as well.
Yeah.
In India, apparently, it's like going to a pranic healer in India, which is supposedly, that's the stuff that, supposedly Heshua Marmion, the guy that they, turned into the person we know as Jesus Christ,
Yep.
supposedly learnt that while he was in India.
Yep.
And
There's so many books
that's what
about that.
they talk about the miracles and the healing of the hands.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a miracle from a Western medical perspective, but from an Indian perspective, it's not a miracle. It's something. It's another skill that people learn, and it's based on this idea that all sickness comes from cracks in the aura, right? Your aura, and the cracks in the aura are caused by bad thoughts.
Yeah, so it's the whole electromagnetic frequencies of your life, and it's all interrelated, isn't it?
Yes.
And music is a frequency. So music has to be a part of our healing pathway.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because, for musicians right now, they're feeling pretty pissed off and angry and frustrated. Feels like no one values what music actually brings, because no one can really go out and gig even now. How can we bring music back into our culture to help us with our healing pathway?
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, we need a fundamental shift in understanding that needs to start from Canberra, really. And I suppose, the only hope for that really is to have a Labor government. I know it sounds so cliched, but the opposition arts minister has been absolutely on point through this whole thing. Like, how ridiculous is it? Like, he's the one that posted about that website, where the Australian government talks about the arts industry. Have you seen that one?
Yep.
It's like, it's mostly young people and blah, blah, blah. And
I know, it's ridiculous.
It's such a joke.
Yeah, no, Tony has been great.
And that just kind of shows you, like, if they're prepared to boldly put something like that up as an explanation of our industry, then that shows you exactly how misunderstood and undervalued we are. And the fact is, they're not even, like, the numbers should be enough. The economic numbers of the size of the industry here, and it should be enough to get them. So I just don't get it.
I've asked 5 times to interview Paul Fletcher, and 5 times I've had the same email back with the same he's just repeating the same thing over and over again. I don't think that he actually has the data about our industry. I don't think he actually understands.
Or that they just don't care.
Well,
I don't know. It's something. There's definitely a disconnect between the numbers and reality and what they are actually doing,
Right. So what's our next step, Ty? Do we need to put together some sort of, and I don't want to say another peak body, we've got way too many of them, but somebody to lobby and provide the real-time data of the ordinary everyday people that actually make up this industry? Do you think that's something we could do? Yeah.
Well, I think, there's definitely hope, I think, with the new person running Q Music for something like that to happen. Right. And I think that, and I might even email her after this, that I think that's something I was talking about with the last person who was running Q Music, who promised to address these kind of issues, to make Queensland music a more inclusive body, and I think that organisations like Q Music could become more effective lobbying organisations, interconnected with the other ones like SA Music, etc. But if those bodies first have to fully represent the whole music industry, which I don't know if any of those have up until now. It's more about the Triple J kids and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. But it has to be a more inclusive body for a start. And I think, already there are positive steps from what Q Music is doing now to do that. And I'd say if those bodies could become more inclusive, and if all of the voices are being heard through those bodies, and then they connected nationally and formed a lobby group, that'd probably be a good start. Probably in conjunction with APRA and other organisations as well. I think, we don't need another peak body, but we do need a dedicated lobbying group of clearly,
100%.
Because they're clearly just way behind in. But then I just find that politicians are just generally way behind anyway. Now look at Trump; he's way behind. He's
Going here.
trying to ignore reality. You know, he's that far gone in his own mind. This narcissistic idiot who, you know, I'm actually going to think I'm going to get the niece's book because, you know, it sounds to me that this is an exact description of what I've been talking about these corporate families where over generations they breed out all empathy, you know, for humanity and turn themselves and into robots, you know, non-feeling robots because that's how they sleep at night.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
then look, this is a very large
disconnect
story
from-
that you're touching on. Very large story. There's so much to talk about with that.
This is the problem. You know, it's like the whole corporate culture celebrates sociopaths and narcissists, you know, and that is another reason why we have a fundamental problem with the world today. But again, that's all caused by men, as far as I'm concerned.
Which brings us back to the beginning part of this interview. So we need one clear call to action, Ty. What is it? What's the first thing that people can actually start to do?
Oh, gee.
Because, you know, if we just talk about it and we don't do anything, nothing changes. So let's do something.
You mean we as the industry?
Well, we as the industry, let's start with us as an industry because we're the ones that are, I mean, we're really hurting right now. There's so many people that are falling through the cracks. So let's just address that to start with. What can we do? And I kind of agree with you, everyone getting together to join Q Music. If Q Music are the right people to actually lobby and make this change, to get that data to the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are other ones too, like I lost my gig and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but that's quite anecdotal. There's no. We need to have a connection with Australian Hoteliers Association. So whatever license you have for entertainment, you've got to report on the number of acts that you're working.
Well, okay, so
all that kind of.
I mean, you have to have a huge cultural shift, I think. But I think part of the reason why so many people have mental health issues in Australia is because, you know, part of the bread and butter of earning a living in Australia is playing in pubs.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
pubs in Australia, which are mostly owned by either Coles or Woolies, have no culture at all inside them. And you know, the reality is that these pubs are there because they have to be able to have the very lucrative bottle shop license, which is next door. Yeah. So that's the culture of a lot of live music in Australia. So you've got a fundamental problem right there. So when you have a culture of basically where it's like, you know, you're a kind of you know, a necessary part of the obligation of being able to run these premises, that they have to have some live entertainment. You know, it's very rare that you go into one of these venues and you feel respected. You feel like they understand that you're there to add value to their service. It's very, very rare. But I think the problem is, though, is that this is, again, part of this whole corporate culture problem because, you know, in some ways, Australia is far more Orwellian than America. You know, you have a greater concentration of ownership, you know, of than you do in America. In some ways, you know, sorry, I've just got to move. I've got my housemates just turned up. I think that's part of the issue. You know, it's like, you know, that's kind of, it makes it really tough, particularly when you've come from, say, you know, somewhere like America. Like I used to do pub gigs in America, and it's just different. It's like,
a different culture.
People are more respectful, you know. That's like, you know, they get it. Oh, you've come here to provide us with some music. That's so cool, you know. Yeah. And so it's much easier to feel comfortable about what you're doing and feel like what you're doing is contributing something positive, you know. And honestly, the pub culture here is just, it's almost like it's very difficult to leave feeling like you've achieved anything except just pay rent.
And it's look, there's some amazing people who are working in hospitality. We've met so many of them over the years that have tried so hard to, you know, create the best thing. And I think a lot of it is that people are just running. There's so much that, you know, compliances they need to meet. They're just running. They have got mental health issues as well. They're super stressed. And so
I don't think that there's many people working in any of these pubs that are actually happy people. That's the other thing too. And then, of course, and then you've got right next to where you're playing is the pokies, and the energy coming from those pokey rooms is generally negative as well. So sorry to be brutally honest here, but
no, honesty is good, and
I think this is it. This is why there's so many people with mental
it's
health
all
problems
about
in the
energy.
game industry, because you know the work that we do is often, you know, not received with any kind of gratitude or respect.
So therefore, that brings us back to energy and mental health. So it's almost like maybe before we do anything with the lobby group, we I guess find the way that we can actually work with our own energy and the electromagnetic fields around us from other people to find the best way.
I think all of us, you know, artists, agents, all of us need to try and encourage anyone who's willing to try anything that's even slightly different from the current culture. You know, like I'd be prepared, like if there was a pub like that, I'd be prepared to pay for a little less to help them get off the ground if there was a genuine culture of respect for music in their place, and that was an integral part of what they were doing. I really would. Absolutely.
Well, this kind of gives us a great place to start, Ty. I think this is our call to action. Let's find a way to work out what is the actual value of music now, and how can
let's encourage anyone who wants to go along with that.
I love it. That is great. Ty, what a great conversation. I could talk to you for hours, but we'll have to do another one. But look, good luck with the single. I really like it. It's so uplifting. It really is. I'd encourage anyone who's feeling a bit down to just watch his single. It's going to make you feel a bit better, and it's a great approach. So congratulations.
Thank you. I think, it's a challenging topic to take on, but you have to offer a hope, because there is hope. There's always hope. There's always hope that you can get through it and get to the other side, you know.
And we will. Yeah. All right, Tyrone Noonan, thank you for adding your voice to this conversation. You take care.